Hello everyone, welcome to Genius Blossom. In this part of the video, we are exploring the fifth lesson of CBSE class 10 Science Biology, the life processes.
Welcome back everyone. In the last class, we explored how green plants make their own food using sunlight, carbon dioxide and water, a process called autotrophic nutrition. Do all living organisms make their own food like green plants? No, not at all. Most organisms depend on plants or other organisms to get their food, and they cannot make their own food like green plants. And this mode of nutrition is known as heterotrophic nutrition. That is, heterotrophic nutrition is the mode of nutrition in which organisms cannot make their own food and therefore depend on plants or other organisms for their survival. Each organism is adapted to its own environment. The form of nutrition differs depending on the type of food, how easily it is available, and how the organism obtains it. For example, some organisms feed on stationary food sources, that is, food that does not move like grass. Others feed on mobile food sources, meaning food that moves or runs like a deer. And this difference in food source affects how the organism accesses or obtains food. And it also determines what kind of nutritive apparatus or feeding organs they need. For example, compare the teeth and digestive system of a cow with that of a lion. There is a wide range of strategies by which organisms take in and use their food. Some simply absorb nutrients from their surroundings, while others actively hunt or consume solid food. And this leads us to the different types of heterotrophic nutrition based on how the food is taken in and processed. Some organisms break down the food materials outside their body using digestive enzymes, and once the food is broken down into simpler substances, they absorb it directly from the surroundings. And this mode of nutrition is called saprophytic nutrition. That is, saprophytic nutrition is the absorption of nutrients from the outside environment after breaking down food materials outside the body. Other organisms take in whole food material and break it down inside their bodies using internal enzymes. And what kind of food can be taken in and how it is digested, it all depends on the body design and internal functioning of the organism. And this type of nutrition is called holozoic nutrition. So what is holozoic nutrition? It is the intake of whole food material and its complete breakdown inside the body. Some other organisms, they derive their nutrition from plants or animals without killing them. And this type of parasitic nutrition is seen in many organisms such as cuscuta, ticks, lice, tapeworm, leeches, etc. Cuscuta, it is a plant parasite and it is commonly called a daughter plant. It trains around the host plant and it absorbs food directly from it. So, based on how food is obtained and processed, the different modes of heterotrophic nutrition are saprophytic, holozoic, and parasitic nutrition. Now let us see how organisms obtain their nutrition. Since the type of food and the way it is obtained differ, organisms have different digestive systems. Single-celled organisms like amoeba can take in food from any part of their cell surface. For that, they use certain finger-like projections called pseudopodia. Pseudo means false. They are false fingers, not original fingers, and they use these pseudopodia to surround the food particle, and as a result, food vacuole is formed. And inside this food vacuole, what happens? The food is broken down into simpler substances, which then spread into the cytoplasm. Then what happened to the undigested material here? The undigested material is moved to the cell surface and thrown out. In another unicellular organism, Paramecium, the cell has a definite shape and the food is taken in at one specific spot. tiny hair-like structures called as cilia. It covers the cell surface, and this cilia help to move the food towards this spot. But as the complexity of an organism increases, different parts of the body become specialized to carry out specific functions. And now let us look at nutrition in human beings. In humans, the alimentary canal, it is basically a long tube extending from mouth to the anus, and this tube, it has different parts and each part is specialized for a particular function. So do you know what happens to the food once it enters our body? And let us explore the process step by step. We eat many different kinds of food and all of it has to pass through the same digestive tract. But have you ever wondered how does our body manage to handle such different kinds of food? Naturally, the food has to be processed into small uniform particles before it moves further. And do you know whose job this is? It's our teeth crushing and grinding the food into pieces that are easier to digest. Now let us think about the next part of the food journey. The food we eat isn't just pushed down dry. It has to be softened and made slippery for smooth movement. That is why our mouth waters when we eat something delicious. But is that just water? No, it is actually a special digestive fluid called saliva, and it is secreted by salivary glands. So what does saliva really do? First, it wets and softens the food like soaking a biscuit to make it easier to swallow. And second, saliva starts the real chemical process. It contains an enzyme called salivary amylase. Think of it like tiny scissors that cut big starch molecules into small sugars. And can you guess who else mix all this while chewing? Is our muscular tongue moves the food around, making sure it mixes well with saliva. Now let us do a simple activity to understand how saliva acts on starch. Take 1 ml starch solution in 2 test tubes labeled A and B. Add 1 ml of saliva to test tube A. Leave both the test tubes undisturbed for about 20 to 30 minutes. Then add a few drops of dilute iodine solution to both test tubes. In which test tube do you observe a color change? If iodine changes to blue-black, it means starch is still present. But if there is no color change, it means starch has been broken down. So what do we conclude? Saliva in test tube A has digested the starch, showing us that saliva breaks starch into sugars. Once the food has been chewed and softened, it does not just sit there. It needs to move smoothly, steadily through the entire digestive pathway. But how does this food move forward? Well, the inner lining of our digestive canal, it is not just like a passive pipe. It is lined with the muscles that rhythmically contract and relax, just like gentle waves pushing a boat forward. And these wave-like movements are called peristaltic movements. These peristaltic movements occur all along the gut. From the mouth, the food moves into a long muscular tube called the esophagus or food pipe, which connects the mouth to the stomach. The movement of food through the esophagus, it is not just a fall due to gravity. Instead, the food is pushed down by wave-like muscular contractions known as peristalsis or peristaltic movement, ensuring the food reaches the stomach even if we are lying down or hanging upside down. Now comes the stomach, a large muscular organ, and it is located on the left side of the upper abdomen. When food enters, the stomach expands to hold it. The thick muscular walls of the stomach, it churn and mix the food with the more digestive juices, turning it into a partially digested semi-liquid mixture called chyme. And this churning action of the stomach, it is very important because it ensures that the food is thoroughly mixed with the digestive enzymes and acids present in the stomach. Let us now see what happens to the food in the stomach. The digestion in our stomach is managed by tiny glands present in its walls, and these glands are called gastric glands. These gastric glands, they release three important substances. First one, hydrochloric acid, and the second is a protein digesting enzyme called pepsin, and the third one, mucus. Hydrochloric acid, it creates an acidic medium. Do you know why is that needed? Because pepsin, it can work only in acidic conditions. And this acid, it helps break down proteins into simpler forms. But if the acid is so strong, won't it damage the stomach itself? That is where mucus comes in. And the mucus forms a protective layer and saves the inner lining of the stomach from being harmed by the acid. Now, have you ever heard adults say, I have acidity today? Is that uncomfortable feeling? It is often because excess acid is produced in the stomach, and it is directly related to what we just discussed. The exit of food from the stomach is controlled by a special ring-like muscle called the pyloric sphincter. It works like a careful gatekeeper, releasing the food in small amounts into the next part of the journey, the small intestine. From the stomach, the food now enters the small intestine, which is actually the longest part of the alimentary canal. So the longest part of the alimentary canal is small intestine. Even though it is so long, it fits comfortably inside our abdomen because it is coiled again and again. Have you noticed that some animals have a small intestine that is very long, while in others it is much shorter? That is, carnivores like tigers, they have a shorter small intestine, and herbivores like cows, they have a much longer one. Can you guess what this difference has to do with their food? It is because the type of food they eat changes their digestive needs. That is, herbivores eat grass which contains cellulose. Cellulose, it is a tough material that takes more time to digest. So they need a longer small intestine. But meat, it is much easier to digest. So carnivores manage with a shorter one. That is, carnivores, they need a short small intestine. That is, the length of the small intestine differs in various animals depending on the food they eat. The small intestine is the place where the final and most complex digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats takes place. To do this, it needs the help of two important organs. Do you know what are they? The liver and the pancreas. Now the food that comes from the stomach is still acidic, but the enzymes from the pancreas, it can work only in an alkaline medium. So before digestion can continue, this acidic food, it has to be neutralized, and this is where the bile juice from the liver plays a key role, and it not only makes the food alkaline but also act on the fats. And you see, fats arrive in the intestine as large globules which are hard for enzymes to attack, and these bile salts, they break them into smaller droplets by a process called the emulsification, and it is very similar to how soap breaks up grease or dirt. Next, the pancreas sends its digestive juice which contains the enzymes like trypsin, lipase, etc. Trypsin, it is an enzyme helps for breaking down proteins, and lipase helps for breaking down these emulsified fats. Finally, the walls of the small intestine have their own glands that release intestinal juice, and this intestinal juice, it completes the job of breaking down of proteins into amino acids, complex carbohydrates into glucose, fats into fatty acids and glycerol. And with that, our food is fully broken down into simpler forms, ready to be absorbed by the body. Once the food is fully digested, it is ready to be absorbed. The inner lining of the small intestine has countless tiny finger-like projections called villi. And these villi greatly increase the surface area for absorption, making the process faster and more efficient. And each villus, it is richly supplied with the blood vessels, and these blood vessels carry the absorbed nutrients to every single cell in the body, where they are used to produce energy, build new tissues, and repair old ones, etc. And the food that cannot be absorbed now moves into the large intestine, and here the walls absorb any remaining water from this material, and finally the leftover waste is removed from the body through the anus, and this process is carefully controlled by the anal sphincter, which regulates the exit of the waste material. So that is our amazing human digestive system, that is from the mouth all the way to the large intestine. And speaking of the mouth, there is one more important point we must know, that is our teeth. They play a key role right at the start of digestion, but if we don't take care of them properly, problems like dental caries can affect our overall digestion and health. And so let us learn how this happens. Dental caries or tooth decay, it happens when bacteria on the teeth act on sugars and produce acids. These acids damage the enamel, especially when food particles and bacteria form a sticky coating called plaque. And this plaque stops saliva from neutralizing the acids, and brushing teeth regularly removes the plaque and prevents further damage. But if untreated, the decay can reach the inner pulp, causing pain and infection. Let us quickly recap the parts of the human digestive system. Mouth where chewing begins and digestion starts. Esophagus carries food to the stomach. Next comes stomach breaks down proteins. Then small intestine, it digests all food and absorbs nutrients. Then comes large intestine absorbs water, and finally anus removes waste from the body. And that is our quick recap of the digestive system, and I hope you all enjoyed the class. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to Genius Blossom for more such interesting lessons. If you have any doubts or suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comment box below, and thank you for watching.